Maybe he's not that dumb. He's like, I want a bourbon. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. So I have had a fair amount of interest from comments and stuff in Instagram, the little bit that I do post related to the channel on Facebook, about covering ECUflash and Evoscan related topics a little bit more. So I've been hesitant to do that, mainly because I'm not here to educate my competition. You know, I want everybody to know how to tune, but our business is tuning. So I'm not going to teach you the specifics of this is what you do with an Evo 10, this is what you do with an Evo 8, 9, but I do want to focus a little bit more on how to use ECUflash and how to use Evoscan from the aspect of I am tuning your car, I'm doing an email tune, or you know, maybe you're going to give it a shot. What do you need to look for? What are some of the tips and tricks of making Evoscan work? So let's get right to it. So the first video that I did in this particular series, which there's only been the one, was how to connect, what you're going to need to do, but we're going to go over that again real fast. You see all the icons up here. I don't have a cable attached, but first thing you're going to need to do is you open your map. So file, open ROM, wherever you have it saved, or maybe you have one here, as the case may be. Go open a map. That's the important part. Got to start there. You're going to select the vehicle type. If you have a car that you don't have a map for, and you're going to pull the map off, for instance, I ask you to pull the map off, you're going to connect to the car, you're going to turn the key on. This will be lit up, although these will be colored at that point, as you saw in the first video. You're going to come through, and you're going to find your car. So in this case, it's an Evo 10, but we have the 3rd gen Evo 7, Evo 8. We have an Evo 9. We have some 4th gen Eclipses, which I don't really get into, but they exist too. Maybe it's an ACD. You're going to learn how to do that, or an Evo 10. There are other cars that are supported. We see that there's Subaru stuff, apparently some canned diesel stuff from Subaru. Really cool. Never seen it. That's great. You can use this to tune BMW Minis. So, a few options. Anyway, we're going to select Evo 10 because that's the map that I have. This happens to be a 2010 map. Now, if you didn't have it, you would read from the ECUflash memory. Make sure that your battery is charged. You don't want a dead battery because you can break an ECU. If you're going to flash a map, write currently loaded ROM image. You can test write, which never done. Sure, cool. I guess it just is checking communication. You can compare, which it doesn't really compare. It'll just tell you yes, 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 no, no, no. It'll tell you which blocks are altered, but not specific maps. And you have some other read, recovery write, and options. So coming down this side, ROM info. Now this is an important one because the rest of this might not appear. You might have a car that doesn't really have a defined file. That is not the end of the world. Just save it and send it to me, send it to your tuner, send it to whoever. But this will always appear. It is based on what you tell it, so you might have to go through and lie to it. Maybe you don't have this particular ROM ID, the 555700006. So you just say, hey, it's an Evo 10. You'll have a thing in here that says Evo 10 base. Okay, great. Actually, I think if you look through here somewhere, it'll show that that's what got loaded. And you don't have to see the maps for them to be there. You, as the end user, aren't going to have everything that I have because I've spent a lot of time finding things and getting them from the internet, looking for myself, etc. So you might have some of this, but just because it doesn't show up, it doesn't mean it's not there. For instance, maybe we're doing flex fuel and you don't see that you have flex fuel, or we're doing speed density and you don't see speed density. It's still there. End of discussion. You don't see it, it doesn't matter. I see it is what matters. So, okay, we covered that. But you're going to have some stuff that might be optional, like this is if you want to run higher boost limit to make things safe because it's stock, the patch is disabled. If we look at the stock boost control curve, this is all doubled. That's the whole point, is that it doubles it so that we can run higher boost than 320%. We'll use the word KPA, but it's not really KPA. And we can double it and then reset this point. Because maybe we're going to run 330, we're going to run 340. In the end, it maxes out at 400 anyway, so you're going to have those numbers under that. In the case of an Evo 10. Evo 8, 9 will definitely go over 400. So some of the other maps that you might have, you need to play with the throttle, the idle on a Evo 10. It's drive-by-wire, so you don't necessarily have a BIS screw. You can command higher TPS versus requested airflow at idle, and you can get some of that fixed. So there's some random maps in here, and for the most part, things that I don't suggest touching immediately, especially if you don't know. Don't touch the timing table. Leave the timing alone. You'll log the car. You can kind of get an idea of the load that it's going to run up here. You'll see the timing numbers. You're going to see the knock. Some more of the advanced features, obviously. Fuel, it's going to be rich if it's bone stock. You can kind of see the estimated values are commanding it to go way rich. Those aren't really real, though. It doesn't run an 8.3 air fuel. It will run like a 9.5, 9.6, but there are a few things that we can fix. You got your rev limiters. You got some of your torque stuff. Again, things that if you're new to tuning, don't got to worry about. Just kind of let it roll. So now we're going to move to Evoscan. And again, I might have things that you don't. For instance, you probably don't have the ability to log a 4-bar map sensor or a 5-bar map sensor on an Evo 10. Well, I've taken the time to figure it out, so I can. But you are going to have, if you use any of the newer Evoscan or you've added it in yourself, you're going to have all the golden XMLs in there. You're going to find the year. It's always going to be a V1. You'll find the year of the car that you have, and hopefully it's the same ROM. Select it. One case that will be different is if you have a 2009 Rally Art or 2010, you're going to hit 2009 EDM, and that's the proper XML. Don't know why, but it's what it is, and that's how you get it to work. So, coming down, things that you're going to have. You need RPM. You don't need barometer, because we don't care if you live at sea level or 6,000 feet. It is what it is. We're going to tune the car anyway. PSI is going to be your boost. This is one you probably won't have. This is related to the idle airflow request to get your cammed car to run. You will need load, because that defines one of the axes that we were looking at. We go back to timing here real fast. Obviously, we know what RPM is. This is the load percentage. It's an imaginary number, but it will tell us where we are here relative to a given RPM. So maybe we're 3,750 RPM, 25 pounds. We might be out here 4 degrees of timing, 6 degrees of timing, depending on what way we are. If you were directly in the middle between 240 and 260, i.e. 250, you're going to be directly in the middle here. It interpolates. So you'd be 5 degrees. You might see that in your map. You might see numbers that don't match up. That's okay. We need the timing advance because we need to know what we're doing there. When we get to boost, you need to be logging active wastegate duty cycle. Now, you might have stock boost control solenoids, but the age of an Evo 10 at this point, you're going to really want to throw them away and put a 3-port on it. You're going to have various load avenues. You don't necessarily need this load MyVec because it's based on a few other variables. You need map calc, math calc. That tells me which sensor it's using, unless I'm doing speed density. It can also help us determine if you have a boost leak. Obviously, we need knock, because then that will tell us if we have too much timing. This all applies to an Evo 8.9 as well. The names are going to be different. We'll get to those in a second. Throttle position, this is your actual drive-by-wire position. Injector pulse width, that will help us determine injector duty cycle. Wastegate duty cycle correction, I like that because I have started using direct boost, where I run a boost target, and this will tell me if I'm over or under on my wastegate duty cycle. Please log that. Manifold air temp is what it says. It's the manifold. Intake air temp is at the MAF. Coolant temp, for the most part, we probably don't care, but it's always nice, at least in the beginning, to make sure that you have your car warmed up, you don't have a bad thermostat, or, as seems to be really common, you put the wrong thermostat in, thinking that 160 degrees is going to help you, but then the car never comes out of warm-up mode. Don't do that. MAF volts, all your fuel trims. You need to log all your fuel trims. In the case of an 8 and 9, you're only going to log the short-term fuel trim, because I turn all that other stuff off. Front O2 sensor is nice if you don't have a wideband. Kind of gives me a little bit of an idea what the air fuel is. Battery level you don't have to do initially, but it is nice because, especially in the 8s and 9s, we might have a bad alternator that's causing problems. So I might ask you to do that. In the case of a 9 and the 10, logging cam position for the MyVec. MAF hertz, not necessarily anything you got to worry about. And these knock, this is more nerd science, so that's why I have those particular ones. We're going to switch to an older version of Evoscan, specifically for the 8 and 9. Again, things that I might have that you don't, but are important to log. Throttle position. Don't necessarily need vehicle speed. It's cool, but you don't really need it. We do need the engine RPM, again, because that's part of determining where we are in any map. I have the 2-byte RPM, so I can be a little bit more accurate. I have 2-byte load. 1-byte load is jank. There is no reason to use it, contrary to the internet. Just use 2-byte load. It's less confusing. That gives us the other axes there. I have some other versions of load based on barometer and temp. Don't need them. Nerd science again. Timing advance, we need to know where we're at as far as ignition timing. Short-term fuel trims, we talked about that. Knock sum, need to know if we're too high, too low. The 8 and 9, we can log knock voltage, which helps me determine if we have phantom knock situations. I think it used to be for the 10, but I can't find it anymore. Coolant temp, if you're a flex fuel car, ethanol percentage. Have a couple different map sensors. 4-bar is obviously the most common. The Evo 10 3-bar, AEM 3.5, AEM 5-bar, pulse width, injector duty cycle. MyVec, if it's a Evo 9, you probably won't have that because that's something I actually had to figure out 10 years ago. So, anyway, actually, no, I didn't figure that out. Excuse me. Somebody else did. I got it to log, I think. I had to figure out some formula stuff, but that was just moving from version to version. Somebody else is responsible for finding the MyVec. I think it was probably Mikhailo, actually. So I will retract my statement. Wastegate duty cycle. I don't use the wastegate duty correction in 8s and 9s. I feel it's a little too slow, but I do use duty cycle, obviously. Front O2 again. Airflow hertz. Airflow 2-byte. If you're a MAF car, sure. If you're not, don't worry about it. Air temperature. If you have an intake air temp wired in that 4-speed density, great. We need to rescale that. If you have a mass airflow sensor, it's built in. Most speed density cars, I just use the fuel temp because it's within 6 to 8 degrees typically. Barometer, again, don't really need that. Target idle RPM, that's important for cammed 8s specifically. The ISC steps, that does tell me if your BIS is right or wrong, along with your TPS. So we know that maybe you need to get the stubby screwdriver out and adjust the BIS, which is base idle set screw. Battery level, we talked about that, just because you need to know if your alternator is any good. I don't worry about the gear because I've never actually been able to get it to work precisely because speed doesn't work precisely. And the rear oxygen sensor, if you have your wideband wired in there, sure, go ahead and do that, or however you choose to have your wideband set up. Anyway, that concludes this particular video. There is no real tech. It's more things that to be on the lookout for. And depending on response to this video, maybe we'll come back to it. Maybe we'll cover a little bit of the basics, things that I've noticed. If you go to some of the other videos, it is obvious that Mitsubishi runs too much timing to start with. You can pull timing and not lose power, and that is dyno proven. I talk about that in Timing is Not Your Friend in that series. It applies to the 8s, 9s, Hondas. It applies to a lot of manufacturer supplied cars. They run rich and high timing, and it's not how you want to do it in an actual performance application. So anyway, guys, if this is content you like, please consider subscribing, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.